A black woman asked to switch VIP seats for white passenger. One call later, entire team is fired. A black woman sitting in first class was told to give up her seat. What happened next was completely unexpected. Maya Carter started her day expecting a peaceful flight to an important business meeting. She had earned her first-class seat through years of hard work and success. But what happened at 30,000 feet would become a lesson in respect that no one on that plane would ever forget. This is the story of how entitlement met its match, how prejudice faced power, and how one phone call changed everything. Subscribe and turn on notifications because this tale of justice served at altitude will leave you speechless. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the private terminal as Maya Carter walked confidently toward her gate. Her designer briefcase swung gently at her side, and her tailored navy suit spoke of success earned through years of determination. As founder and CEO of a thriving tech company, Maya had learned to carry herself with quiet authority. She approached the check-in counter where a young woman with a polished uniform greeted her warmly. "Good morning, Ms. Carter. Everything's in order for your flight to Geneva. You're in seat 1A, our premium first-class window seat." Maya nodded her thanks and made her way to the exclusive lounge. The flight was crucial. She was heading to finalize an international partnership that could expand her company globally. She had specifically chosen the window seat for the privacy it would afford her to review final presentation materials. 20 minutes later, the boarding announcement echoed through the terminal. Maya gathered her belongings and joined the first-class boarding line. As she entered the aircraft, she was struck by the luxurious interior. Cream leather seats, ambient lighting, and the quiet hum of wealth and privilege. She located seat 1A and settled in, placing her briefcase in the overhead compartment and her tablet on the side table. The flight attendant, a professional woman named Claire, offered her a welcome drink. "Thank you," Maya said with a warm smile. "This is exactly what I needed after a hectic morning." As Maya reviewed her presentation notes, she noticed other passengers filing into the first-class cabin. Business executives, well-dressed travelers, the usual mix of people who could afford premium accommodations. She paid little attention until she heard a loud, imperious voice from the entrance. "Excuse me, but there must be some mistake with the seating arrangements." Maya glanced up to see a tall, blonde woman in her 50s standing in the aisle. Everything about her screamed entitlement, from her perfectly styled hair to her designer handbag that she carried like a badge of honor. Behind her stood a nervous-looking companion, clearly uncomfortable with the attention they were drawing. The woman, who Maya would later learn was named Evelyn Stokes, surveyed the first-class cabin with the air of someone who owned the world. Her gaze lingered on each passenger, assessing and categorizing them with practiced efficiency. Flight attendant Greg approached the woman with professional courtesy. "Good morning, ma'am. How can I assist you?" "I'm Evelyn Stokes," she announced as if the name should carry weight. "I'm a Platinum Elite member, and I always sit in 1A. There seems to be someone in my seat." Greg consulted his tablet. "Ma'am, seat 1A is correctly assigned to Ms. Carter, who booked it several weeks ago. Your seat is 3C, which is also a premium first-class seat." Evelyn's perfectly manicured fingers drummed against her purse. "That's unacceptable. I've been flying with this airline for over a decade. Surely there's been some administrative error." Maya continued working on her tablet, but she could feel the tension building. She had encountered this type of situation before, someone who couldn't accept that they weren't the most important person in every room. "I can double-check with the gate agent," Greg offered, "but our records show Ms. Carter's reservation is valid and confirmed." "Well, check again," Evelyn demanded, her voice rising slightly. "And while you're at it, perhaps you could explain to that woman that she might be more comfortable in a different section of the aircraft." The casual dismissal in Evelyn's tone made Maya's jaw tighten almost imperceptibly. She looked up from her tablet, meeting Evelyn's gaze directly. "I'm quite comfortable where I am, thank you," Maya said calmly. Evelyn blinked, clearly surprised that Maya had spoken up. Most people, when faced with her imperious manner, either cowered or deferred. This woman's quiet confidence was not what she had expected. "I'm sure you are," Evelyn replied with a condescending smile, "but you see, I have priority status with this airline. I'm certain we can arrange something more suitable for everyone." Maya set down her tablet and gave Evelyn her full attention. More suitable for whom exactly? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Other passengers in the first-class cabin had begun to take notice of the exchange, their conversations growing quieter as they tuned in to the drama unfolding. Evelyn's companion, a brunette woman who had been trying to blend into the background, tugged gently at Evelyn's sleeve. "Maybe we should just take our assigned seats," she whispered. But Evelyn was not about to back down. She had built her reputation on getting what she wanted, when she wanted it, regardless of who stood in her way. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," she said, her tone sharpening. "I'm not just any passenger. I'm a VIP with this airline, and I expect to be treated accordingly." Flight attendant Claire approached the situation, sensing the rising tension. She had worked in first class long enough to recognize the signs of a brewing conflict between entitled passengers. "Ladies, perhaps I can help resolve this," Claire said diplomatically. "Ms. Stokes, I understand your preference for seat 1A, but as Greg mentioned, it's properly assigned to Ms. Carter." Evelyn turned her sharp gaze to Claire. "Are you new here? Because anyone who's worked for this airline knows that Platinum Elite members receive priority accommodation." "I've been with the airline for 7 years," Claire replied professionally. "And while we certainly value our elite members, seat assignments are honored on a first reserved basis." Maya watched the exchange with growing irritation, not at Claire's attempts to mediate, but at Evelyn's assumption that rules didn't apply to her. She had encountered this mentality countless times in boardrooms and business meetings, people who believed their perceived status entitled them to whatever they desired. "Ms. Stokes," Maya said, her voice carrying quiet authority, "I reserved this seat weeks ago for a very important business meeting. I'm not moving." Evelyn's face flushed slightly. "Business meeting? I hardly think that's comparable to my needs. I have connections throughout Europe that require my immediate attention. And I have a presentation that could affect hundreds of employees and millions in revenue," Maya replied evenly. "Your connections will have to wait." The exchange drew more attention from other passengers. A businessman in seat 2B lowered his newspaper to watch. An elderly couple in row 3 whispered to each other. Even the captain, making his pre-flight rounds, paused to observe the situation. Evelyn's companion, Linda, tried again to diffuse the situation. "Evelyn, maybe we should just take our seats. The flight will be boarding soon." But Evelyn was beyond reason. Years of getting her way through intimidation and assumed superiority had ill-prepared her for someone who wouldn't back down. "This is ridiculous," she declared loudly enough for the entire first-class cabin to hear. "I shouldn't have to explain myself to someone who clearly doesn't understand how these things work." The implicit message was clear, and Maya's eyes flashed dangerously. She stood slowly, her 5'7" frame somehow seeming to tower over Evelyn despite the other woman's height advantage. "And how exactly do these things work?" Maya asked, her voice remaining calm but carrying an edge that made several passengers lean forward. Evelyn faltered slightly. Something in Maya's tone suggested this woman was not going to be easily dismissed or intimidated. "Well, the airline has certain protocols for valued customers," Evelyn stammered. "Protocols that override confirmed reservations and paid accommodations?" Maya pressed. "Protocols that suggest some passengers are more deserving than others based on what criteria exactly?" Claire stepped forward again. "Ladies, perhaps we could continue this conversation after—" "No," Maya interrupted, her gaze never leaving Evelyn's face. "I think Ms. Stokes should explain her reasoning right here, right now. What makes her more deserving of this seat than me?" The cabin had fallen completely silent. Even the background hum of the aircraft systems seemed muted as every passenger waited for Evelyn's response. Evelyn looked around desperately, seeking support that wasn't forthcoming. Other passengers either avoided her gaze or watched with obvious disapproval of her behavior. "I'm a frequent flyer," she said weakly. "I contribute significantly to this airline's revenue." "Nake, as do I," Maya replied. "In fact, my company books dozens of first-class seats annually for our executives. But that's beside the point. The point is that you seem to believe you're entitled to something that belongs to me simply because you want it." Captain Reynolds, who had been observing from the galley, approached the group. His presence immediately commanded respect from both passengers and crew. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, though his tone suggested he was already well aware of the situation. "Captain," Evelyn said quickly, "I'm Evelyn Stokes, Platinum Elite member. There's been a seating error that needs immediate correction." Captain Reynolds consulted with Claire and Greg, reviewing the seating chart on Greg's tablet. After a moment, he looked up. "Ms. Stokes, according to our records, Ms. Carter's reservation for seat 1A is valid and confirmed. Your assigned seat is 3C. If you're unsatisfied with your accommodation, we can arrange for you to take a later flight." The offer hung in the air like an ultimatum. Evelyn's face went through several shades of red as she realized she was cornered. "This is unacceptable," she hissed. "I'll be speaking to corporate about this entire debacle." "That's certainly your right," Captain Reynolds replied. "In the meantime, please take your assigned seat so we can begin our departure procedures." Maya settled back into seat 1A, her point made. She had not raised her voice, had not resorted to threats or dramatics. She had simply stood her ground with the quiet confidence of someone accustomed to fighting for what was rightfully hers. As the aircraft pushed back from the gate, the tension in the first-class cabin was palpable. Maya had returned to her presentation materials, but she remained acutely aware of Evelyn's presence 2 rows behind her. The woman's agitation was evident in her sharp whispers to Linda and the way she repeatedly pressed the call button for flight attendant service. "Excuse me," Evelyn called out to Greg as he passed her row. "I need to speak with someone in authority about the seating situation." Greg stopped, his professional smile showing strain. "Ma'am, Captain Reynolds already addressed your concerns. Your seat assignment is confirmed and cannot be changed." "That's not acceptable," Evelyn snapped. "I have important work to do, and I specifically requested seat 1A for the privacy and workspace it provides." Maya couldn't help but overhear the exchange. Without turning around, she spoke clearly enough for the cabin to hear. "I also have important work, which is why I reserved that specific seat weeks in advance. First come, first served is typically how business operates." Evelyn's face reddened. "No one asked for your input." "No one asked for your commentary on my seating either," Maya replied evenly, still not turning around. "Yet, here we are." The other passengers exchanged glances. A businessman in row 2 whispered to his companion, "She's got a point." An elderly woman nodded approvingly at Maya's composed response. As the plane reached cruising altitude, flight attendant Claire approached Maya with the first-class meal service. "Ms. Carter, would you prefer the salmon or the beef tenderloin today?" "The salmon, please," Maya replied with a genuine smile. "And thank you for your professionalism earlier. I know these situations can't be easy to handle." Claire's face lit up at the acknowledgement. "Thank you for saying that. We do try our best to accommodate everyone fairly." From behind them, Evelyn's voice carried. "Fairly? Is it fair that someone who contributes less to this airline gets preferential treatment?" Maya finally turned in her seat to face Evelyn directly. "Ms. Stokes, you seem to have a fundamental misunderstanding about how commerce works. I paid for this seat, just as you paid for yours. My payment is just as valid as yours, regardless of how many flights you've taken or how much you think you've spent." "You don't understand," Evelyn insisted. "I'm not just any passenger. I have connections, influence." "So do I," Maya interrupted quietly. "The difference is I don't use them to bully flight attendants or displace other paying customers." The word bully hung in the air like an accusation. Several passengers shifted uncomfortably, recognizing the accuracy of Maya's assessment. Linda tugged at Evelyn's sleeve again. "Please, can we just enjoy the flight?" But Evelyn was beyond reason. Years of using her perceived status to get her way had left her ill-equipped to handle someone who wouldn't be intimidated. "I'm calling corporate," she announced loudly, pulling out her phone. "This is unacceptable customer service." Captain Reynolds' voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've reached our cruising altitude of 35,000 feet. Please ensure all electronic devices are in airplane mode." Evelyn ignored the announcement, dialing a number on her phone. Maya watched with growing annoyance as the woman began speaking loudly enough for the entire cabin to hear. "Yes, this is Evelyn Stokes, Platinum Elite member. I'm calling to file a complaint about the appalling service I'm receiving on Flight 447. Maya pulled out her own phone, putting it in airplane mode as instructed. She noticed Greg approaching Evelyn. "Ma'am, you need to put your phone in airplane mode or turn it off completely." "I'm in the middle of an important call to your corporate office," Evelyn snapped. "Federal regulations require all phones to be in airplane mode during flight," Greg explained patiently. "No exceptions." Evelyn huffed dramatically but complied, ending her call. This entire experience has been a disaster from start to finish. Maya turned back to her work, shaking her head at Evelyn's performance. She had dealt with difficult personalities throughout her career, but Evelyn's combination of entitlement and victimhood was particularly grating. As lunch was served, the cabin grew quieter. Maya enjoyed her salmon while reviewing quarterly projections. The Geneva meeting was crucial. A successful partnership could expand her company into 3 new markets and create hundreds of jobs. Behind her, she could hear Evelyn continuing to complain to Linda and anyone else who would listen. "I've never been treated so dismissively," Evelyn declared. "That woman has no idea who she's dealing with." Maya paused in her reading. Without turning around, she spoke in a voice that carried clearly through the cabin. "You're absolutely right, Miss Stokes. You have no idea who you're dealing with." The implicit challenge in Maya's words sent a chill through the first-class section. There was something in her tone, not threat, not anger, but quiet certainty, that suggested Evelyn had badly misjudged the situation. 2 hours into the flight, Maya decided it was time to make her own call. She pulled out her phone and dialed a number she knew by heart. Within moments, a familiar voice answered. Leonard Hayes, speaking. "Leonard, it's Maya," she said quietly, though her voice carried in the hushed cabin. "I'm on the flight to Geneva, and I wanted to confirm our meeting arrangements." "Of course, Maya. The partners are very excited to meet with you. Your presentation materials arrived yesterday, and they're impressed." Maya smiled genuinely for the first time since the confrontation began. Leonard Hayes was more than just a business contact. He was a trusted advisor who had helped guide her company's international expansion. "That's wonderful to hear," she continued. "I've made some final adjustments to our projections. I think this partnership could be transformative for both companies." Behind her, Evelyn was listening intently, though she pretended to read a magazine. Something about Maya's conversation suggested this woman was more significant than she had initially assumed. "Maya, I should mention," Leonard continued, "the partners specifically requested that you stay for the board dinner tomorrow evening. They want to discuss some additional opportunities." "Additional opportunities?" Maya asked, her interest clearly piqued. "They're considering a broader strategic alliance that could involve their entire European network. Your company's technology platform has caught their attention across multiple markets." Maya's voice took on a more serious tone. "That would be substantial. Are we talking about the kind of partnership that could affect market positioning?" "Potentially, yes. They mentioned something about preferring to work with innovative companies led by visionary entrepreneurs." As their conversation continued, other passengers began to take notice. Maya's side of the call revealed someone involved in high-level international business, not just a successful professional, but someone operating at a level that commanded respect from major European corporations. Evelyn's face had gone pale as she processed what she was overhearing. References to board meetings, European partnerships, and market positioning suggested this woman was far more influential than she had assumed. "Leonard, I need to ask a favor," Maya said, her voice dropping slightly. "I'm going to send you the details of an incident that occurred today. Nothing urgent, but I'd appreciate your thoughts on how to handle it professionally." "Of course. Is everything all right?" "Just a reminder that some people still believe they can treat others poorly based on assumptions about status or importance. I thought you might find it interesting from a business ethics perspective." Leonard's chuckle was audible even to nearby passengers. "Maya, you know I trust your judgment completely in these matters. Handle it however you see fit. Your instincts about people are usually spot on." As Maya ended the call, the cabin had fallen silent again. The conversation had painted a picture of someone with significant business influence and the confidence of powerful partners. Flight attendant Greg approached Maya's seat. "Ms. Carter, is there anything I can get for you?" "Actually, Greg, yes. Could you ask the flight supervisor to speak with me when convenient? Nothing urgent, but I'd like to discuss today's experience with someone in a position of authority." Greg's professional demeanor shifted slightly, not with concern, but with the heightened attention given to passengers who clearly had influence. "Of course, Ms. Carter. I'll have Deborah speak with you shortly." Behind Maya, Evelyn was frantically whispering to Linda, "Did you hear that conversation? She's not just some random business traveler." Linda nodded nervously. "Maybe we should let this go, Evelyn. This seems bigger than a seat assignment." But Evelyn's pride was still wounded. She wasn't ready to concede defeat, even as doubt crept into her voice. When Flight Supervisor Deborah Lane approached Maya's seat 10 minutes later, she did so with the careful attention of someone who understood that passenger complaints from certain individuals could have serious consequences. "Ms. Carter, Greg mentioned you wanted to discuss today's experience. How can I assist you?" Maya turned to face Deborah, her expression serious but not angry. "I wanted to ensure that today's situation is properly documented, not for revenge, but for training purposes. Your flight attendants handled themselves professionally, but the situation shouldn't have escalated as it did." Deborah nodded carefully. "Of course. Would you mind if I took some notes?" "Please do. The issue isn't just about seat assignments. It's about how certain passengers feel entitled to displace others based on assumptions about who deserves better treatment." As Maya began recounting the events calmly and factually, other passengers listened with growing understanding of what they had witnessed. This wasn't just a difficult passenger situation. It was a case study in prejudice and entitlement that had been handled with remarkable grace by the woman in seat 1A. As the plane descended toward Geneva, news spread through the cabin staff about who exactly was sitting in seat 1A. Flight Supervisor Deborah had discreetly researched Maya Carter during the flight and discovered she was not just another business traveler, but the CEO of a company that had recently signed a multi-million-dollar corporate travel contract with their airline. More concerning for the airline, Maya's company was currently evaluating partnerships with European carriers for their expanding international operations. Today's incident could potentially impact a significant business relationship. Captain Reynolds requested a private word with Maya as passengers prepared for landing. "Ms. Carter, I want to personally apologize for any inconvenience you experienced today." "Captain, your crew handled the situation professionally," Maya replied. "The issue isn't with your airline's policies or your staff's behavior. The issue is with passengers who believe their perceived status entitles them to displace others." "We take these matters very seriously," Reynolds assured her. "I understand you've already spoken with our flight supervisor about documenting the incident." "Yes, though I want to be clear. This isn't about punishment. It's about education. Today's situation could have been avoided if certain passengers understood that shared spaces require mutual respect." Behind them, Evelyn was frantically making phone calls, trying to reach airline customer service before landing. Her earlier confidence had evaporated as she realized the magnitude of her miscalculation. "Linda, I need you to back me up on this," Evelyn whispered urgently. "Tell them I was just trying to resolve a seating confusion." But Linda had heard enough of Maya's conversations to understand they were dealing with someone far more influential than either of them had realized. "Evelyn, maybe we should just apologize and let this go." "Apologize?" Evelyn's voice cracked with indignation. "I did nothing wrong. I'm a Platinum Elite member with rights." As the plane touched down in Geneva, Maya gathered her belongings with the same calm efficiency she had displayed throughout the flight. She had handled the situation exactly as she handled challenging business negotiations, with patience, professionalism, and quiet strength. Flight attendant Claire approached her one final time. "Ms. Carter, it's been an honor serving you today. Your grace under pressure was remarkable." Maya smiled warmly. "Claire, you and your colleagues did exactly what you should have done. Treated all passengers fairly and followed proper procedures. Thank you for maintaining your professionalism even when the situation became uncomfortable." What Evelyn didn't know was that Maya's business contact Leonard Hayes was more than just a European partner. He was also on the board of directors for the airline's parent company. When Maya sent him a detailed account of the day's events, the response was swift and decisive. Within hours of landing, the airline's European operations director received a call from corporate headquarters. The message was clear: conduct a full investigation into the incident and ensure it never happened again. The investigation revealed that this wasn't Evelyn's first complaint about seating arrangements. Over the past 2 years, she had filed 17 formal complaints, most involving disputes with other passengers over seat assignments. A pattern emerged of someone who used her frequent flyer status as a weapon to intimidate fellow travelers. More damaging was the discovery that Evelyn had made several social media posts about the incident, describing Maya in terms that the airline's legal department flagged as potentially discriminatory. Her posts revealed the true nature of her objections to sharing first-class accommodation. 3 days after the flight, Evelyn received a registered letter from the airline. Her Platinum Elite status had been permanently revoked, and she was banned from flying with the carrier for 2 years. The letter cited repeated violations of passenger conduct policies and discriminatory behavior toward fellow travelers. The flight crew received commendations for their professional handling of the situation, with specific praise for their adherence to anti-discrimination policies under pressure. Maya, meanwhile, successfully completed her business meetings in Geneva. The partnership she negotiated was even more extensive than originally planned, creating 400 new jobs and establishing her company as a leader in the European technology market. When news of the airline incident reached the business press, it became a case study in corporate leadership and personal integrity. Maya's composed handling of discrimination at 30,000 feet was held up as an example of grace under pressure. 6 months later, Maya was invited to speak at a corporate leadership conference about diversity and inclusion in business travel. She used the airplane incident as an example of how prejudice often masks itself as entitlement. The real lesson, she told the audience, isn't about airline seats or frequent flyer status. It's about the assumptions we make about who deserves respect and who deserves to occupy the same spaces we do. She continued, "Success isn't about demanding deference from others. It's about earning respect through your actions and treating others with dignity regardless of their background or apparent status." The airline implemented new training programs for dealing with passenger conflicts, using Maya's incident as a teaching tool for crew members. They also strengthened their policies against discriminatory behavior by passengers. Evelyn, stripped of her elite status and facing a 2-year ban, filed multiple appeals and complaints. All were rejected. Her social media posts about the incident had been screenshot and preserved, providing clear evidence of her motivations. The story became a reminder that in an interconnected world, treating others poorly has consequences that extend far beyond the immediate interaction. Maya's quiet dignity had not only protected her own rights, but had led to systemic changes that would protect other travelers from similar treatment. As Maya often said in her subsequent speeches, "Respect isn't determined by the seat you're sitting in. It's demonstrated by how you treat the person sitting next to you." This story shows us that true power isn't about demanding special treatment. It's about standing up for what's right with dignity and grace. When prejudice meets principle, principle doesn't need to shout to win. If this story inspired you to stand up for what's right, make sure to subscribe for more tales of justice and dignity triumphing over entitlement. Turn on notifications so you never miss stories that prove respect and character matter more than status or privilege. Thanks for watching, and remember, the most powerful response to prejudice is often the quietest one.